Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're asking the question, do we really have free will? Is free will even a thing in our lives? And this isn't really on the subject of Bible stories, but we are going to be talking about it in a religious context because, as I've discussed elsewhere in the blog, genetic determinism isn't a thing. It isn't real because how our genes express themselves is entirely dependent and under the influence of our behavior. We can turn genes off and on depending on our behavior, so genetic determinism isn't real. So that leaves us with the question of whether or not we have the free will in the religious sense, which kind of goes back to our discussion on the book of Genesis, but not really. And this is a point that my 13-year-old daughter came up with. So keep that in mind. This is something that a child came up with. If a child can think of this, then it's pretty glaringly obvious that there are some serious philosophical questions being raised by the religious interpretation of an all-powerful God and human free will. There's an inherent contradiction there. And if you don't have an answer for that, then the entirety of whatever religion you're basing the Bible on is called into question as well. So all three of the Abrahamic traditions are based on the concept of an all-powerful God, that everything that happens in the universe, even things that we would deem as evil, are entirely under God's control. And any conversation that we have around the subject of free will is going to take place in that context. You cannot separate an all-powerful God from the motivations and will of every other created entity in the entire cosmos. That doesn't work. So you can, if you say that God is all-powerful, then it's impossible for us to have free will. And the argument that my daughter came up with is absolutely brilliant, which is why I'm sharing it with you today. She said, if you were to create a robot with the power to wipe out all of humanity and to destroy the earth, the sole purpose of that robot, is the only reason that you created it, was for the purpose of wiping out humanity and destroying all life on earth. That's why you created it. You are the one who gave it the power to do that. You are the one who programmed it to do that. Then you would be responsible for the robot carrying out its designated function. It wouldn't matter if the robot had free will. You would still be responsible. If you had the power to stop it, you would be responsible for that. And that's within the context of you being a finite creature and the robot being a finite creature. We're talking about an all-powerful God, where everything you do, everything you say, every thought that crosses your mind is not only under the control of God, but actually created by God and planted there, which means that sin cannot possibly exist. That everything that we do, everything that human religion labels as sin, is actually coming from God, created by God and planted in you, and you are programmed to do it that way in accordance with His will. That's what an all-powerful God means. You either admit that God is all-powerful and therefore none of us has free will about anything, not even our thoughts. and not even our self-awareness is even truly our own. Or you're saying that God's power is limited. Even if he chose to transfer some of that power to us, to give us the opportunity to exercise our free will, he would still be responsible for it, because he was the one who had created us, analogous to the robot, created all of our motivations, created all of the circumstances that went into our decision, and programmed us to respond in that way. Which means that there would be no such thing as sin. The only way that free will works in combination with an all-powerful God is if we are non-dualistically one with God. If there's no distinction between us and God, there's no separation between the mundane and the divine. There's no separation between God and humanity. We're not flawed. We're not fallen. We're not dirty or sinful or whatever words you want to use for it. We are God. There's no difference. There can't be. It's the only way that free will works, is if there's only one entity anywhere in the universe, and that entity is non-dualistically co-present with every shade of reality that we see around us. All this multiplicity that we see is really just it's an illusion that we've created for ourselves so that we can experience. We would not this entity, this divine being, would not be able to experience anything without the illusion of multiplicity. This being wouldn't be able to experience love. This being wouldn't be able to experience even its own self-awareness. It would just be there. That's why we're here. So that this infinite, divine one being can actually experience its own existence. We're the vehicle of all of that. And that's the only way that free will works. If you interpret the Bible non-dualistically, is the only way that it makes sense. All of it. The whole book. Without that, there are too many questions, too many quandaries, too many contradictions. It just doesn't work. If you're taking it logically and actually looking for some empirical evidence that a rational, critical thinking human being could actually believe this stuff, then you have to read it non-dualistically. And if you do read it non-dualistically, it all makes sense. And it all becomes true. And everything in the book of Genesis related to free will makes sense within the context of non-dualism. It answers all of the questions and all of the contradictions and all of the moral implications of every aspect of the stories of God punishing people for situations that they either couldn't possibly get out of, or that God set them up to get into that situation, like dangling a forbidden apple in front of their eyes and saying, "Don't eat that." I mean, it's just that on its own proves that there's no way that Adam and Eve could have had free will in that situation if they weren't non-dualistically one with God. there's just no chance. Because by definition, they didn't know good from evil. They didn't recognize, or disobeying God wasn't even in their vocabulary. So putting it there when everything else in the garden was there for them to use, and saying, don't eat that, it's just setting them up to fail, which is not the God that the Abrahamic tradition is asking us to believe in. So that's today's video. I hope this helps somebody, and I hope you're getting something out of the discussion. I'll see you next week.